Well, hello everyone. My name is Sandy Testerman, and I am the wife of Joe Testerman, who many know of him as one of the maintenance engineers at Sallie Mae and Navient. And we want to come and just speak a few words to maybe comfort you. I look at this as more of a celebration of life. Heidi was a wonderful, fun lady. And I will have to probably read some of my thoughts. I don't speak publicly. This is just something from my heart. I will tell a little bit about the quilt here. This was something that 7 people, because I broke my wrist, 7 people helped me complete. There's words on there. It was supposed to be for Heidi while she was in the hospital, something to give her comfort. And the words on there are, to me, things that have us think and bring comfort to us. Down at the bottom, we used a little, when I would send out prayer requests, I labeled it as healing for Heidi. And so those words are down at the bottom of the quilt. There is a label on the back in remembrance of her. So now I'll go to my paper. I just kind of want to explain, when I speak, you'll hear some of the words that are actually on this quilt. None of this was planned this way. Of course, we didn't expect this to be the turnout. But this is, this was the end of the season for her right now. So, here's something. Oops, I've got my pages mixed up. Sorry. Let me start again here. When I was working on the quilt and quilting butterflies throughout it, I had gotten a text that Heidi had stepped into eternity. And then I just thought, well, what do I do now? What am I going to do with this quilt? And I talked to John Fisher, and he said, finish it. So, again, with the help of 7 others, we finished the quilt. My heart did sink. I cried because this was not what we were expecting to happen. I was feeling a little discouraged, but then I remembered a verse that always brought comfort to me. I call it my life verse from the Bible. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct thy paths. Tony, there is a plan and a path for you, not the one that you and Heidi had thought you would be walking through together. Life sure has a way of changing things. I'm reminded of something my brother-in-law shared with Joe and I. He said, we are all given a timeline for this life. Some longer and some shorter. I think Heidi lived a lot of life in the time that she was given. I find joy in that because, I don't know, we did some adventures with her and Tony, fishing, going out to eat sometimes. Jessup's Tavern was one of our favorites. When I think of Heidi, one word is, in particular, I think of joy. Her smile, laughter. She was a fun and trustworthy friend, one that took time to listen. She truly cared about what you had to say, and she would remember. We might not see her for months, and she would remember what our conversations were. She was intelligent, dedicated, showed the utmost respect to everyone. Great sense of humor, which she had to have to take some of my husband's antics and be able to laugh about it. I can flip my page. I think Heidi was a strong woman, and she was a phenomenal hostess. That was her word. I remember phenomenal. I will always remember that about Heidi. And she sure colored our world. And so I can tell you the story later about how this quilt came together, but there's a lot of color there. And to me, that represents Heidi well. Let's see. Something else to think about. I believe we were all born with a measure of faith. And I know right now, their faith is probably rattled. And that measure of faith, if we cultivate it, it'll grow. And I asked myself sometimes, well, what is faith? And to me, faith is daring the soul to go beyond what the eye can see. I believe in God and that He loves each of us, accepting us just as we are. I don't believe expressing our faith that it's about religion or a denomination. I believe it's about a personal relationship with our Heavenly Father. I believe God is love. I believe faith grows if we chase after it. And love, what is love? Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. And that's 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8. I believe Heidi and Tony are the everlasting picture of what love looks like. And love is the reason we're here today. The love of our friends, Heidi and Tony. Now, I sent out a lot of requests for prayer for Heidi. We prayed and we wished and hoped for healing, praying for a miracle healing. Healing came not the way we wanted, but the ultimate healing. And that's what I call it when someone has stepped into eternity. It was the ultimate healing. There's no more pain or suffering. Rest peacefully, my dear friend. Maybe I'll find peace and comfort knowing cancer cannot hurt her anymore. We send our deepest condolences to family, friends, co-workers. And I had this one little thought was, when a butterfly I see, I will remember thee, Heidi.
Hello, I'm not much of a speaker, but I could tell you a few things here. When I first met Heidi, I was actually scared to death of her because John Fisher sent me up there to do something. And I was the right gentleman, I guess. But as I got to know her, especially when her boss was away, that's when I would let loose. But she would always talk to me, and carry on sometimes. But when her boss was there, it was strict work and no deviation. I understood that. But we talked a lot. I didn't know she fished, and I don't know how we got on that, but Tony and her hooked up with me, and we went out on a charter boat. And, I'm looking at this lady like, she's an office worker. She can't do this. She tore me up. She outfished. I'll tell you what, that girl, she learned fast, and she just got the hang of it. And we went out several times doing different things. And it was always a nice time. But I'm not an office lingo guy. I always worked in a factory. So I would actually call him, I called her my BFF, she called me her BFF. Now, what you would think is a BFF is the best friend forever, not my book. A BFF was a big fat friend. And when she heard that from me, she almost fell off her chair. So, things like that I remember her by. And I'm really going to miss her. I mean, we, went out together and all, and she was some kind of phenomenal woman. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. I'm not sure where this is going, but with your patience, I'd like to try to just get through a few memories of our friend Heidi and share with you what I've learned from her and what I think she can teach us all. There's nothing traditional about what I'm going to say, so brace yourself. But Tony told me to just put it to the metal and don't look back, so here we go. Oh, and by the way, in case anyone doesn't know, I'm the boss, so. Heidi was one of my very best friends in my entire life. And you could probably assume that simply because we spent more hours working together than any two human beings should be allowed. But that's not how I know she was my friend. I know because there's nobody I ever argued with, fought with, and made up with more in my life than her. And I was more than valuable for all of it. Now, we had to kill a lot of time together because contrary to what TV would make you believe, law is not like Law and Order. The way I describe it is a 15-minute segment of Law and Order, it takes approximately 6 months of human time. So there's a lot of not anything going on. And we talk about everything, music, sports, movies. We had very quirky tastes. Most of them we agreed, some of them we violently fought over. And most of the time, we were no worse or better than Siskel and Ebert, but we never did anything directly. So every once in a while, oh my God, the pictures, she's staring at me. Every once in a while, nothing would have to be straight up the middle. There'd have to be layers and layers. So I thought the best way would be to give you an example of a conversation that might have occurred. A few days before Tony gave us the news, I happened to be watching the latest music video, film, concert, whatever you call it, from a fellow by the name of David Byrne. Not the biggest fan, but quarantine does strange things to you. He told a story about a song he wrote called Everybody's Coming to My House. And Dave's a little twisted, so he said, this is the point of view of a shy introvert who sits at home dreaming and wishing that everybody would come to his house, and then has a panic attack and goes crazy when everybody actually does come to his house and he doesn't know how to get rid of them. But then he said, but you know what? Just out of curiosity, we did a different version of that song and we hired a children's choir from New York City. Same music, same words, and when it was done, everybody wanted to come to my house. And everybody had a great time. And I think the thing about Heidi and I, we both could do both versions of that song really well. And if you were good friends with Heidi, as some have said and others will, if you had a party, she was all in. She was there from the get-go, and she didn't stop until total exhaustion. Yours, hers, everybody's. But then, when it came, she got right in the middle of it, and she had more fun than anybody. She just had an absolute blast. And the things she went to, the levels she went to are absurd. I mean, the example I'll give you, the quickest one I can come up with is one of my birthdays. I got an SUV. Well, her husband, who couldn't leave well enough alone, figured out it had a race car engine in it. Well, everybody knows what you do when you have an SUV with a race car engine in it, don't you? You don't? You get a day pass to go to a racetrack and race around with every other gearhead who's got some gadget he brought. And you have fun, and then you go back to pit row and you have a party and you meet all your new friends, and I'm like, what in the hell is this? But that's what she would do. I mean, my last birthday gift, which probably will work better in Illinois, I got a videogram from the ex-con, ex-governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich, who she also knew was my neighbor in real life. But because layers are Heidi, the reason she did it was because, and she told me this, I got to pay money to make a politician say what I told him to say. But if you worked with Heidi, it was that other song. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but she worked hard or harder. But she wanted nothing to do with anything else. She would take no acknowledgement. She would participate in no group event. It drove me mad. For a while, I tried to get her out of it. I called it Stop the Downton Abbey Mess. You know, you're one of us, you're not somebody's servant, but she would not do it. Heidi knew 2 first names in the entire English language, Mr. and Mrs. It was so bad that unbeknownst to me, a group of people in the office put together a pool to see who could make her slip up and use their first name first. This went on for weeks, and suddenly out of nowhere there was an explosion outside of my office. The salesman extraordinaire, Mr. DePaulo, had won. But it was that bad. And that's who she was. But, you know, I stopped the Downton Abbey stuff because 1, it wasn't working, and 2, I was getting a little self-conscious because I knew I was being hypocritical. There are parts of my job I didn't like either. I saw a recent TV show where the definition of a general counsel was said to be a highly compensated human sacrifice. I lived not to be that person, and she lived for me not to be that person. And she would try to give me pep talks when I'd get down, and they were not straightforward either. After one particularly bad transaction where we had swapped out the swear jar for a closet, she and some of her co-conspirators created a deal memento. Now, if you don't practice law, a deal memento is usually a useless piece of plastic that says, we came from somewhere and did this together, hooray. Not Heidi. Sometimes there are things, maybe it's a train, maybe it's a car. She brought in a plexiglass case about this big containing a can of Brasso polish, a polishing cloth, and a large ceramic bronze replica, I hope, of poop. I won't, if you can't figure that out, find somebody from Sally Mae, they'll explain it to you, but I won't do that. But her most regular pep talk was she would sample Bill Murray's speech from Stripes. We need a leader. You're our leader. You're Sergeant Hulka's big toe. Think about it. If you don't have a big toe, you can't go forward. You can't. She'd go and she wouldn't stop. In life, you meet lots of people. You meet mentors, you meet friends, you meet coaches. But a while back, I realized, and I made up my own class of people. I call them the but-for people. But for you, I don't exist. But for Heidi Winters, I don't exist. I just don't. The number of people that I can count to be there for me, no matter what, no matter when, is less than on one hand. And Sergeant Hulka may still have his big toes, but today he lost a thumb. And I don't know how I'm going to do without that. I don't think any of us do. But I'll tell you how I think she would want us to. In my humble and hopefully ignorant opinion, doctors didn't do a darn thing for our friend. But she and I did share one doctor. I didn't introduce her, but I did make a lot of referrals. Unfortunately, he died last year too. His best way for delivering prescriptions was behind a really raggedy piano. And in one of the not so well-known tunes that the good doctor put out, he says, "Life is a near-death experience. Hell is on this great big earth. But it just might be a taste of heaven if we all just knew our worth. And if you want it bad enough, you just might be surprised." And I don't know why that jumped into my head when I was trying to figure out what I was going to say. But the more I thought about it, the more it was meant to be here. I think in this day that we live in, it's hard to be surprised about anything. Heidi got up damn near every day of her life surprised, and in a good way. You may not know it, but Heidi quit on me more than once. And that was before she talked her sane, rational husband into moving to Delaware. And I am not crazy enough to think that the joy of working for somebody as obnoxious as me is what got them to come here. What got them to come here, and I know it because they were an integral part of our family, is this was their surprise. This was their adventure. This was their chance. And the thing that kills me today, with all that has happened, is how well they have done here. The friends they have made, the community they live in, the people that support them are unbelievable. They have succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. And so this hurts, and I know it. The other thing I would say from that is the conundrum with Heidi and I is, as hard as it was, as hard as it is for me to figure out some crooked, back-assward way to make her know how valuable she was, to make her know her worth, She knew the worth of every last person she touched. It didn't matter who you were. You hear people talk about, oh, well, he's good, she's good with people who are superiors, or they're good with people who are their inferior. There was no such thing. Heidi was intimately valued and valuable to every human being in every walk of life, in every building that she ever worked in. And it wasn't just a work a network, it was real. I don't know a lot about how Heidi was raised, but I do know that she was a very integral part of our son's life growing up. And he had his struggles. He had his struggles with Delaware. He had his struggles growing up. And she was no limit of opinions about that. And so I kind of got a sense of who she was. And I never told her this because she would have just kicked me and said, shut up. And I wish I had anyway, but I hope this is true. I mean, it makes me sleep better, but someone a long time ago told me something that I didn't believe, but I always filed it back in the back of my head. And when I met Heidi and got to know her over the years, I realized that this was her. And that person said to me, you know, you always act like you have no confidence. You get everything wrong. Everything's your fault. You're very insecure. You have no self-confidence. But I've figured you out. It's not you don't have any confidence in. You have infinite confidence in yourself. It's the rest of us saps in the room that you can't trust further than you can throw us. And there was something about Heidi, and I don't know exactly what it was, but I think I get it. She refused acknowledgement. She refused any sort of praise, particularly in the professional world. And I think somewhere the reason for that was because she was her own boss. When she was satisfied, she was satisfied. When she wasn't, she'd go way up a tree and you'd have to get her down and tape her wrists back together and threaten to not have her jump off the roof. But it was a principle with her that she was not up to this for anyone else's compliments. And that made it twice as hard to get through to her. And I hope I did in some way or another to say just how much she was worth to me. So here we are. We're just the saps left in the room with the pictures. And I think that if there's anything she taught us that we should leave here with, it's know your worth, know everyone else's worth. There's a lot of talk these days about first responders and equal pay, and it's not about pay. It can be, but the point is know how valuable and appreciate each and every one of us are. And find something, as hard as this would be, Tony, I know right now, find something you are passionate about and do it as hard as you can. And don't forget to be surprised.
Hi everyone, I'm going to try and get through this. Excuse me. My name is Kaylee, and the Winters are my neighbors and my friends. I am a senior at JMU, and a few years ago when I was a freshman, I was having probably the worst week I've had to date in college. I was so homesick, so sad, just really struggling. And my mom must have mentioned it to the Winters in passing. And sure enough, a few days later, I received in the mail this huge smiley face box full of treats. And I mean, it was like this big. I was just a giant smiley face. And for me, it wasn't so much about the gift itself, but the meaning behind it. That seems like such a small thing, and it seemed like such a small thing to me. But it meant the world to me, and I'm sure they didn't even think second about it, but it just really speaks to the people that they are and the person this Heidi is. It was so kind and generous, and it honestly is one of the things that got me through. I knew that there was people back home supporting me, not just my family, but my friends back home. Excuse me. And I kept that box with me through the whole year. In my dorm, and it just reminded me that anytime I saw that smiley face back at me, I just saw the Winters smiling at me as well, and it's just something that got me through. And I just think it speaks to Miss Heidi's character and how kind and generous and thoughtful she is, and just goes out of her way for people. Even though I was 4 hours away, she took the time to make me feel special and loved. So, thank you.
My name is Josh Frank. I'm a neighbor and fellow Wolfpack member of Heidi. Heidi, she never ceased to surprise. Like, I thought I knew her, well, kind of. The first time I met her, I said, "Oh, we've got a new neighbor." And shortly after we were introduced and we'd formed a kind of a tight-knit group, we were invited for dinner, and it was the nicest dinner I've ever had at a neighbor's house. It was as professional as anything that had ever been done. And then she had a not Christmas party, which I still talk about to this day. It's unbelievable. And I'm looking at this person that is a perfectionist and was such an amazing host. And I go, wow, she's really good at that. And then she would drop the most off-color joke I've ever heard that would make a sailor cringe. And I go, wow, she's really good at that. Then I served on, I made the mistake of signing up to be a board member of my community. It was, to this day, one of the worst mistakes I'd made. And I did it because, I'm not crying about this part. I was fined, they were going to fine us because I'd left garbage cans out. And it made me angry. And in a personal way, I said, this is garbage, that I'm going to get fined for this. So that's why I got on the board. And Heidi served on the board. And I saw a level of professionalism that it blew me away. Like what she did, how serious she took it. And meanwhile, she slipped me a drink before we would go in that she would bring for me. And I thought, God, she's good at that. That's how I remember, and I'm fortunate to call her a friend and a neighbor. So that's it.
If I wrote the epic story of Heidi's life, I would title it The Battle Axe. What can you say about someone whose strength of character and sheer force of will is their defining characteristic? Tough, smart, and strong, with the ability to see situations clearly and right through people. Heidi had a level of toughness that was matched by the depths of her caring. She inspired us all with her thoughtfulness, as you've heard from everyone who's come up to this podium. Through small gestures and large acts of selflessness, Heidi made everyone around her genuinely feel important. Every year, Heidi hosted a holiday party. You just heard about the holiday parties, and invited the entire legal team. Knowing that my children would be there and other kids were coming as well, she didn't just offer a couple of kid treats. In classic Heidi style, she had an entire table full of crafts and paintings and stickers and kids' drinks and kids' foods and all the things anyone could ever imagine to entertain children. If you ever told Heidi you liked something, you could bet she would remember it years later. If you ever needed help, you could bet Heidi would be there for you, no matter the cost or the inconvenience to her. Heidi and I first met as colleagues and then became close friends through long hours and battle scars. But it's her sense of humor that made difficult days a little more bearable. For example, if Heidi was here with us, right before I'd come up, I'm sure she would have run up and wiped with a Clorox wipe this microphone right here. Far before the COVID pandemic, Heidi and I battled for the title of Chief Germaphobe. When we first met, we bonded immediately over our, shall we say, OCD. She loved reporting every Monday morning that she had yet again shampooed her sparkling white carpets. And I throw away my pens if anyone touches them. We would give each other a knowing look and a nod. So around each other, we sort of felt normal. And it was our inside joke. In fact, when I became general counsel and moved to Delaware, Heidi got me 2 presents. The first one was a mug that said CDO on it. That's OCD, but with the letters neatly arranged in alphabetical order. She also got me an industrial-sized jug of hand sanitizer, which I can tell you has come in pretty handy in the last several months. Heidi was endlessly curious. In Salt Lake City, at one of our many business travels, I introduced Heidi to Middle Eastern cuisine, and she was full of questions about my Persian culture and background, the foods, the history. In return, Heidi introduced me to her favorites, and now one of mine, the famous 7-topping Chicago hot dog. I remember Heidi explaining it. Place the hot dog in the steam bun, pile on the toppings in this order: yellow mustard, sweet green, pickle relish, onion, tomato wedges, pickle spear, sport peppers, and celery salt. The tomatoes should be nestled between the hot dog and the top of the bun, and you place the pickles between the hot dog and the bottom of the bun. Why do I tell you this? Does that sound complicated? Well, Heidi was a mastermind of all things complex, from complicated legal matters all the way down to hot dogs. And that's the depths that we saw every day. And by the way, I'll never again eat a Chicago-style hot dog again without thinking of Heidi. Heidi was a force of nature. You feared her. At least I did. I don't know for you guys. You loved her and you admired her. The proverbial steel hand inside a velvet glove. And sometimes just a steel hand. She was also a very private person. I was fortunate to speak with Heidi one last time before she went again back into the hospital. And we had a chance to say our goodbyes. When I asked her if she wanted me to share her health situation with her colleagues, who all cared very much about her, as I expected, she said no. She said, no matter what happens, I want to be remembered as Heidi the battle axe. Above all, she wanted to be remembered for her strength and her resilience. And so, she inspired everyone around her with her work ethic and with her humanity. No matter how late she had to work, or how short the notice, or how hard the task, you knew she would do whatever it took to get it done. I'll take care of it meant that she would, like no one else. Heidi had much to be proud of, and yet she also inspired in all of us a great sense of humility. Almost exactly 3 years ago, Heidi was recognized at work for an Excellence Award. Because of her humility, Heidi refused to attend the award ceremony where I was asked to speak and present the award to her. I said, yeah, well, Heidi, I'll present the award anyway. So I threatened to present the award anyway if she did not attend. But you all know Heidi. Heidi, being Heidi, stood firm. So, not to be undone, I went ahead and presented the award anyway, with Heidi absent, describing her as a standard by which I measure everyone else. I shared with the audience that day that her true worth was not in her incredible work, and we've heard about the incredible work that she did, but in the way she made all of us want to be better versions of ourselves. That day, I spoke about Heidi to a room full of people, like today, but without Heidi there. Today, I'm speaking about Heidi again to a room full of people. But this time, Heidi is with us, in our hearts, in our memories, and in all of us in the way she made us better versions of ourselves. I know that I am a better person for having had Heidi in my life. And finally, when I think about Heidi, I think most about how she approached life with endless optimism. Whenever you ask her how she was doing or how her day was going, without fail, and even on our last conversation, she answered, you all know it, phenomenal. If there's one thing I think of to honor Heidi, it's to approach life that way. For all of us to remember to take our eyes off our own immediate problems and difficulties, and to make our approach to life a little more Heidi-like. Phenomenal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tony, family, friends, neighbors, peers, and co-workers. My deepest and sincerest sympathies. I just wanted to share some personal thoughts. I'm not sure everyone has shared their experiences in different ways. Heidi and I got to know each other once I started working at the executive wing at a more personal level, and basically spoke almost every day, except weekends, of course, and she would come tell us about her white carpets on Monday. So I just wanted to share a few of those personal things. I'm not sure you guys are aware of how personal she could really be. I'm here to speak about Heidi. She has left us, left a huge void, but also a huge impression. I wanted to share some impressions that she left with me and my family. Heidi and I got to talking about dogs, realized she was a huge dog lover, and met my then Westie and fell in love with him and offered the dog sit. So along came a trip to Puerto Rico, and she did. In Heidi fashion, she baked cookies for Dino, something that I, as the owner, would never do. Dino choked on a cookie, and she thought she was going to lose him while I was in Puerto Rico with my family. She proceeded to take this dog to the vet, get him x-rayed. All of the treatments had to be done. Whatever she did, and she called me. And I get this voice, Mrs. Rosado Santiago, I have to inform you that I almost killed your dog. And to all this, I'm wondering, what? Apparently the cookie went down the wrong way, so it just scratched its throat. Obviously, there were consequences to that. In Heidi fashion, she refused to tell me how much she spent to save my dog, and she refused for me to pay for half of it at least. And then for many months forward, she kept on joking about how she almost killed my dog, so I had to tell her to stop. So I just thought that would bring light to something I'm not sure many were aware of. How kind she was in that sense, thoughtful she was. Years later, I had to put Dino down. We had him for 13 years. He had cancer. When I shared that news with Heidi, we cried together. Just the person she was. She felt my pain, and she shared it with me. Another instance is that I'm not sure you guys are aware, but she was determined to speak Spanish. And she'd like to show off to me that she knew how to speak Spanish. So her favorite word was mala, which means bad. So then one day she got to talking to me. We could talk about just about everything. And says, I want to know what the translation of badass is. And I said, Heidi, I'd rather not. It's not a good translation. It sounds kind of vulgar. She knew mala, and she kept on wanting to press for the second part of that phrase. She figured it out. She found out from someone. She calls me, and we went to get breakfast one day, and decides to tell Jesus, Papi, the guy that's at the grill, that she was the translation to badass, but she said it in Spanish. I looked to her and said, Heidi, stop, that sounds so vulgar. Please don't say that out loud. She kept on repeating it louder. I thought Jesus was going to piss his pants because he knew how vulgar it sounded. Then one day we were talking about food. And again, she swore she knew how to cook Spanish rice. So I said, really? So what is what you call Spanish rice? And she says, well, it's rice, pigeon peas, onions. She goes on and, tells me the whole recipe. So I tell her, funny, I make the same thing, but I don't put olives in mine. She looks at me in Heidi fashion and says, it's amazing how you can't cook your own rice. So that's the person that I remember that I will miss. The person that would tell me on Monday How was your weekend, Miss Rosado Santiago? She never pronounced my name. And I would tell her how it went, and she would say, I'm so excited I cleaned my screens on Saturday. It's just who she was, how she took pride in her home, how she took pride in everything that she did, how she loved her family life, how she loved everyone around her. And like everyone has agreed, how Heidi made everyone feel special. My nickname that she gave me was Princesa, which in English means princess. I will forever be grateful to have known Heidi, Tony, for being a small sliver of her amazing life. Her positivity, her strength, her joy. I will forever miss Heidi. Thank you all.
Tony, first of all, this is a phenomenal job, and she would be very happy with this. Where do I go? When I started at Sallie Mae as a temp, I had Mary Ann have me there and educate me what needed to be done, and then came our first board book exercise. And that's the first time I got mad at Heidi, because my presentation for Jonathan Clark, the pages weren't right. They didn't flip, and she wouldn't let me change it because we didn't have time. We gotta go. And we did, and then the last minute would be Demas running with the Acura, running to FedEx, and it was just a lot of good times. And I remember many, many times being there at nighttime with her when it was just me and her and Ricky Zepp. He had to be there for the printers because they always broke down. And the music she would whip out of that iPod, I would be like, what the hell? And it was just a good time. And then when my mom passed, my dad had a difficult time, and he hated the nights. And so she'd call him and say, hey, let's go to Delaware Park. I'll meet you at Delaware Park. And then my husband and I and Heidi and my dad would go play bingo, you know, and it was just, she just was going to be out and helping him out and just be part of our life. My grandkids love her, and they love that Tony and her would always open their pool to us. I think we might have used it maybe a little bit more than you all did. Yeah, could be. But it had a diving board, and Ace learned how to jump off the diving board there, and Ava did, and my niece's kids, and my son had a blast on it, and his girlfriend, and it didn't matter who all came. She got me the text, everything's set up for you, enjoy. And I saw her August and September, and I noticed she was losing weight. And then in September, just something didn't feel right with her and talking, but she wasn't going to tell me. And I think because I was with my family, having a good time. And I remember being on the deck, Tony, having pizza and drinks. And I think she kept slipping Eddie fireball shots. And I remember him going home and puking his guts out because of all those fireball shots. I remember him telling her, I could never go out partying with you because I would never survive with the laughing. He'd come home, you know, holding his stomach just from the laughter. She was a funny woman, caring woman, and I will miss her. And I'm glad I'm not at work to have to go past her desk and not see her. Or her young, Miss Perry, what's going on? And I go in and just sit down, and she'd imitate her mom and dad, and she loved them. But that was hysterical when her dad bought a Hyundai. And that just cracked me up for the longest time, and how she could say it. And Tony, she adored you. It was obvious. You guys have such a love story. But we're all here for you. Remember, I only live 3 minutes away. That's why the pool was so convenient. But if we had to go home to go to the bathroom, she's like, no, 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 you come in here, you know, and we're like, oh, we gotta take shoes off, and you gotta do, you know, I don't know. But we always felt so welcomed. She always just, like I said, with her and my dad, they just had a little bond that no one else really reached out to do. But Heidi, I'm not sure if they ever won money at Delaware Park though, but my dad would go with her and they'd have bite to eat, and it's just, to me, that's just so a special, special woman, and I will really miss her. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marianne Bryant, and I work with Heidi. I believe it's been 8 or 9 years. I remember the day that she walked in with Lauren with her backpack down the executive row. I said, "Who is this girl?" And then I got to know her, and Mr. started, and I begged her not to say that, but it was her. And then every time you asked her how she was, she'd say phenomenal. And then when she'd ask me how I was, I started saying phenomenal back. And I always thought, how could somebody always be so phenomenal? And then I just moved into a new role in May, and I had to work more, me and Heidi had worked closely as admins, and I just moved into a new role in May, and I had more interaction with the board, and I needed her help. I needed her to dummy it down. What are these committees about? Well, what should we be doing? What not? Let me take something off your plate. No, Mrs. Bryant, you can't do that, but let me sit down with you. She put together probably a 12-page PowerPoint presentation, dummied down for it was the Board 101. And she went through each thing, explaining everything. She knew everything about everybody. It was amazing to me. I've been in this role for 20 years. I know a lot of things about a lot of people, but how she knew down to what people wanted to eat, how they wanted to be greeted, what to do and what not to say. Her love for Tony. When Tony started working at Sallie Mae, you could just see this little glow that she got to see her husband. But they also, you didn't know that they were husband and wife. A lot of people didn't know. And when you said it, it's like, wow, they're together? Yeah, they're together. And you brought so much happiness to her. And I have to say, Lauren, there are times I said to her, why the heck did you move here? You guys fight like husband and wife. And then about after the 3rd resignation and you wouldn't accept it, I said, just stop, just leave. But she didn't, and your story is true. You guys had a lot in common. Nobody understood it. We do now. And she was very phenomenal. We can't say that word enough. I think it'll be a word that once we hear it in any other setting, we'll think of Heidi. She'll be so missed. She taught so many people so many things. And the last time I saw Heidi was on September 18th at our last board meeting. I had no clue how sick she was. I found out later that it was very hard for her to stay that day. And each day she stayed and she pushed through and she made sure every board member had everything. And she made sure that I didn't step in to help her. She did it all like she wanted to do. She was a perfectionist, she was a professionalist, and she made sure everything was done to the end, and it was done right. And as Lauren will say, we are the last saps of the world, and she is the most phenomenal person I probably worked for. I aspire to be more like her. I'm glad that during the time in my new role, the things that she's taught me, that I will take on for the rest of my career, and I couldn't be more appreciative. Tony, I wish you the best. You'll be in all of our thoughts and prayers. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else who would like to share a memory or a story? Well, if not, this does conclude our time of sharing for Heidi. On behalf of Tony, he'd like to thank each of you today for your love, your support, and more importantly, your visits today. At this time, we'd like to offer any guests that would like to come forward to please take this opportunity to do so. Then we would ask that you would depart quietly to your cars while Tony may have just a few moments of privacy. In meeting with Tony and neighbors, one thought that was left with me that I know that Heidi would like each of you to always remember when something comes up. Meh. So with that thought in mind, this does conclude our services for the life of a beautiful woman who we celebrated today. Thank you.